Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Merkabah Scholar Society members, make sure you guys check your emails. You guys will be getting the links soon for the app. App is now in the testing phase that I talked about in the live last night. So as soon as it's done testing, you guys will be able to download it on Android and iPhone as well. So we're just testing the app right now, taking care of everything, making sure it works fine. The app will be basically like Instagram, as I said, and it will be for everybody who's a member of Merkabah Scholar Society. Membership of guys still asking about it. Links in the description. Make sure you guys take advantage before we go into the final phase. Links in the description. I recommend you take advantage now. Also, books are going to be going out this week. So again, stay tuned for that. Make sure you guys check your emails. I'll be sending out emails. Also, we have a meeting coming up. So check your emails for that link for the meeting. And we'll also have a live on YouTube for members only. So you guys will get that link. But we got a lot coming up. So yeah, we're going to get into the next video that's coming up. I talked about before. Going to be doing the whole Gnostic video and get into that information. Touched on it a little bit in previous videos, but there's a lot more to get into, and it really segues into a lot of information that we're going to be getting to about secret societies, what have you, as I touched on in those videos. So it's a lot of prerequisite information, which is one of the reasons why I've been putting out rundowns. So pyramids and temples, important video. It's a lot in here that corresponds with a lot of things we're going to be touching on. So it will be another part 2 to this video, which is why I'm putting this one out. A lot of people saw it already, so if you didn't, make sure you catch this rundown. But we're going to be getting to a lot of videos this week. A bunch of new stuff is going to be coming out. And I want to end off a lot of these series again. So I talked about the Biblical Bible series. We'll be ending off. Going to finish up the Old Testament and get into the New Testament. So I'm going to end up dropping the next 3 books all at once. So there'll be 3 videos that's going to come out in the next 3 Old Testament books. And you guys will see that shortly. But yeah, I want to get into the Gnostic texts and show you guys some amazing stuff in those texts. And it's important to get into the Gnostic text because it's the closest, practicing religion, that I've seen that's hinting more towards the truth. They coded it really well. It's almost as if it was a second attempt or possibly a first attempt coding the Bible. Completely different. Things are a lot more explained for the esoteric, conscious understanding with the Gnostic text. And it really hints at a lot of deeper things. So I really want to touch on that. But yeah, I'm going to get into this video. I won't hold you guys up too much. Again, make sure you guys check your emails. I sent out emails to all Never Pay Again members for that sale. That's still holding up until final phase. So make sure you guys take advantage. Link is in the description for everybody who's trying to get in before the final phase. So make sure you guys take advantage of the sale. Enjoy this video. Stay tuned. Check your emails. I'll see you guys in the live tonight. Let's get into this video. So we're here in Chichen Itza in Mexico, Cancun. And this video is going to begin here. And we're going to do a lot of information about the pyramids here in Mexico as well as in Egypt and around the world. So it's a lot of people here. We're going to get into it quickly and won't take your time too much. So let's get into it. Okay, so one of the biggest mysteries on planet Earth was and continues to be the pyramids. We look around the world, we find pyramids all over the world, and there's so many different stories and different things that pertain to these pyramids, who built them, why they was built, and their actual function and purpose, if it is one. But we got to look at this and just ask ourselves the why, as far as the purpose of the pyramids. So now, the thing is, and I'll give you an analogy, just think about it. If you find yourself middle of nowhere, you have absolutely no idea where you are, how you got there, or where you're going. But eventually, you find other people, you create a civilization. What you're going to do, and your first instinct during this moment, is going to be self-preservation, of course, but also it's going to be as a civilization to survive, to basically figure things out and to basically grow as a civilization and to basically survive. And you can only survive with the resources that you have. So it doesn't make sense for any civilization with supposed intelligence that has sophistication and intelligence to build pyramids for no reason. It's a huge undertaking when you look at these pyramids and when you see them, as of course you guys have, they are huge. The time and resources it takes to build such things, why would you do it for symbolic reasons? It doesn't make sense. It's the same thing with the temples, just as with the pyramids. They're huge. There are so many of them. And it doesn't make sense to build this stuff just because you believe in something that's not real, that doesn't exist. So we got to think about that. You got to think about that analogy as a people, as a civilization. What are you going to do with your time and resources? And as we can see, looking back at the ancient world, they spent their days, they spent their lives dealing with the building of these pyramids, temples, everything that we ascribe to so-called religion, but it goes back to nature, the planets, so on and so forth. So all over the world, we find these pyramids, we find these temples. And what we tend to do today is we associate churches today to what we see back during ancient times. So you look at churches today and, people go to church and they pray to this book and they pray to this God. Nothing happens, as we all know. Millions of dollars are spent building these megachurches. We've seen these megachurches. We've seen these ancient churches that are elaborate. They're beautiful. They're ornate in a lot of different places. And it's so much detail and craftsmanship and masonry that goes into the building of these structures. It's like, we know that it's bullshit. Why would you build this church? Why would you spend all this time and money building these churches when we know nothing happens? So mega churches is built, nothing happens. So we look at this and we equate this to back during ancient times, and we think the same thing with the ancient civilizations, that they just built this stuff for symbolic reasons because they believed in something that's just as weird and spooky as us believing in Jesus and Moses and all this other stuff. And it's the same back then as it is now, to where, yeah, we spend all this money because people believe, and that sort of justifies the time and effort and money and everything else that goes into building these structures, because a lot of people believe it's real. But it doesn't make sense for a civilization back then that's intelligent, that's united, and that's advanced to do so unless it had some real benefit. So as we begin to dig deeper into these ancient civilizations and the monuments and the temples and everything that they built, we see that it's clearly not symbolic, that these things correspond to planets, they correspond to astrology and astrological zodiacal signs that actually exist, nature, the human body, plants, animals, so on and so forth. These monoliths and temples and statues and pyramids go back to very real things that actually exist. And we know sun moon worship exists, still does. We know that the ancient civilizations revered the sun and the moon, and that a lot of the mythology that surround them is dealing with the sun and the moon. And again, you look at that and you still say, okay, well, it's the sun and the moon. We know they really exist. Why go through the trouble of building these huge, temples and structures to the sun and moon if it wasn't a purpose or a point to it? So I talk about the movie Prometheus in a few videos. And in that movie, what they basically do, this is a really important movie, by the way. If you didn't see Prometheus, you need to see it. But it's an important movie because they took, real artifacts, like real ancient carvings, mixed with some fictional carvings in a fictional location in outer space near Saturn, to basically come to the conclusion that we should all have come to by now, and that many people don't even know, is even a question or a thing. And that's the fact that when we look around the world, we find all these reliefs and carvings, different civilizations drawing the exact same thing and talking about the exact same constellation, which we're going to get into a lot in this video, one specific. But across the world, we find this unity with the constellations and the same drawing of these constellations by different civilizations over different periods of time. So now in the movie, we know they took those carvings and they basically did a compilation and they compiled them and they put together a map that basically sent them to this planet where they was hoping to find the aliens that created human life. Because what they came to the conclusion and proved in the movie was, in fact, it was aliens that created, the human race, and we shared DNA with them. And as I talk about in my videos, the whole junk DNA or the missing link, the reason why it's missing, the reason why they call it junk DNA, is because that DNA can't be found on this planet. That part that's coded within us can't be found because it comes from whatever or whoever created us, and so on and so forth. I get into this, but Prometheus in the movie, they get right into it and they go into those aspects and they ask those questions. And the thing is, it's a movie, but it's the exact same thing in real life. In real life, we have these reliefs, we have these carvings, as I'm going to show you in this video, from different civilizations around the world, different people during different time periods, talked about the same thing. They drew the same thing and they revered the same things all across the world. And it's just like in a movie, to where when you start to compile this information and look at it, there is no way you can do that. You can look at it and come to the conclusion that this is strictly symbolic for no reason at all. And they just did this, out of the blue to celebrate or basically pay homage or praise these, constellations and so on and so forth. So this is something you got to ask yourself. And this is where the research is going to lead you to when you start doing the research. And the deeper you dig, you're going to see how crazy it gets and how this question just keep pounding away at you as to the why. So when we look at these pyramids around the world, especially in Egypt, of course, we see with the Great Pyramids, they gave us math, they gave us science, they gave us geometry, astrology, and so on and so forth. And it's the same with the pyramids down in Mexico and Chichen Itza. And when you look at these pyramids, they not only give you all that, they also give you effects that correspond with the sun. Okay, so just like the ancient Egyptians, the Mayans hid math in the pyramid. So this pyramid here represents math and different levels as far as relationship to the sun, relationship to the stars. So every 52 years, March 21st, you have 7 planets repeat itself. So you have 52 years, 5 and 2 is 7 planets repeat their position, only 7 planets, just like the 7 days of the week, and those planets being named after different days of the week, as well as different Roman gods. So you have math in the Great Pyramids, you have math in the pyramids here in Chichen Itza. Also here you have the vernal autumn equinox. In the afternoon, the sunlight hits the stairway, causing 7 isosceles triangles to form and create a shadow of what is basically a 120-foot rattlesnake. And that rattlesnake basically is shown like down the side of the railing here on the stairs, and it corresponds or connects to the head that's at the bottom of that railing. This is why that head is there, because it's the head of the snake. And with the illusion, you would say, or the way the shadows hit that stairway, that railing, it gives you this whole rattlesnake along with the pyramid or the triangle pattern that looks like a rattlesnake. So it's something that people come to see. It happens twice a year. They're at the temple of Kukulkan, which Kukulkan is the Mayan name for Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl is also called the morning star, which is Venus. And I talked about this in the Osiris DVD and what that entails. But it meant something for the Mayans in Chichen Itza as well. And that's one of the things we're going to get into in this video. Understanding the Mayan culture. We know we had the Olmec, we had the Mayan, we had the Inca. And these different civilizations and how not so unique in their own little customs, but what they talked about as far as what they practice is exactly the same. And we're going to see it in so many different places. And just like also in Egypt, you have the 3 pyramids aligning with the stars on Orion's belt. You also have the pyramids in Mexico aligning with Orion. This is one of the reasons why I went down there in November during this time to basically see Orion, which I've seen a few times in my travels across the world. And it's a beautiful thing to see when you can see Orion and you can see the constellations that they saw thousands of years ago still there. And the fact that they talked about this thousands of years ago is amazing, as if it's something to behold, which it is. So I posted on my Instagram this picture of the entire Orion. As you can see, it's right there. I'm in Mexico at the hotel. Chichen Itza is about a couple hours away. So you have the same alignment. You have the same thing with Orion in Egypt as you do it with the pyramids in Mexico. And as we see this whole pyramid set up here, they also have, interestingly enough, the same type of setup as the temple in Karnak, where it equates to the body. Okay, so one thing I want to point out real quick is how this pyramid is so much like Hypostyle Hall in Egypt, and definitely like the temple of Karnak in Luxor. So you have like the pillars that we see, the same as in Karnak temple, where the temple in Karnak represents the body. So remember the book, The Temple in Man, I did a video on it, where it represents man. So you have the pillars representing different parts of the body. And when we looked at the back wall, we can see that it represents the spine and so many different parts of the body, the heart, the chambers to the heart, the chambers to the brain. So they have one like that here where the roof is not intact, but it's almost exactly like the temple in Karnak. So again, when we look at the pyramids and temples all over the world, we clearly see the same things. And it says here, celestial alignments. As with other ancient cultures, observatories, pyramids, and temples were erected based on celestial alignments. Prior to the Maya rising to power circa 400 AD in Central America and Mexico, there is evidence that the Olmec people had already begun to use astronomical orientations to direct the layout of several ceremonial centers, with the pyramids of the New World oriented to observing and predicting the motions of the sun and moon. As with the Egyptians, we can deduce that Mayan astronomical endeavors heavily relied upon the ritual and ceremonial worlds of the culture. However, here we have a wealth of evidence to substantiate such claims. Left behind are codices, or systems of hieroglyphic recordings of the Maya, and which include celestial sightings and how these sightings and predictions are woven into the entire cultural complex. The Dresden Codex has perhaps proved the most fruitful in helping to recreate the ancient environment and containing an elaborate calendar used to record the observations of Venus, which, again, if you've seen the last DVD on Osiris, we get into Venus. And we just talked about Venus with Quetzalcoatl being the morning star, which seems to be an object of utmost importance to them. Working with both a solar calendar and a ritual calendar, the ancient Maya imparted much meaning in the heliacal rising of Venus, which is made evident in the structure of several ceremonial centers throughout the area. Unlike the megalithic and Egyptian complexes, scientific observation can be better deciphered here because of the elaborate recordings left behind and because of the fact that so many of the deductions the Mayan made so closely resemble recent calculations of the same recorded cycles. Like the Egyptians, the Mayan had devised two calendars, one solar and one ritual, which interacted and depended upon one another for the dictation of certain ritual events to be carried out. The sky for the Maya was a seeming personification of gods and deities who played important roles in the daily lives of the population. Most significantly, the relationship between the sun and Venus was represented of Kutayakan, the god of Venus, and symbolized the cyclic myth of departure and return, or death and resurrection. In addition, other objects may have been tracked in order to predict certain natural phenomena in accordance to seasonal changes, therefore placing major importance on the accurate prediction undertaken to better predict the earthly events thought to be under the control of the gods. So what it's basically saying is exactly what we see in ancient Kemet with this whole relationship with the pyramids and the temples dealing with agriculture and so on and so forth. Same thing we see when you start looking at many of these ancient civilizations and the things that they built is dealing with, astrology or dealing with vegetation or growth or the crops and so on and so forth. Talked about with Osiris and the whole Korax festival, and then him laying straight out is basically dealing with. If you've seen the DVD on Osiris, which would basically be before this, but him laying straight out is basically dealing with rebirth. As I said, he's the god of the underworld because when you're dead, you lay straight out. You're in the coffin, you lay straight out, and it's dealing with the sun's journey through what's under the zodiac. So that circle in that zodiac, as we see in the Temple of Dendera, shows you one, they all had a knowledge of astrology. They have a knowledge of the zodiac, which is where we all get it from. And it's important and huge and vital in everything that they did in the ancient world. We see the same thing in Mexico. So when you look north, south, east, west, anywhere in Mexico, all over the world, the one constellation that you're going to see constantly that seems to be in the the center of most civilizations in Mesoamerica, Mexico, and North and South America, is the Pleiades. The Pleiades, which is we're gonna talk about a lot in this DVD. The Pleiades is super important, and if you study the Maya, we know they were obsessed with the Pleiades, and just about every ancient civilization around there was obsessed with the Pleiades. So what do we know the Maya for? We know the Maya, of course, for, the calendar, the whole Mayan calendar and everything, which you basically can get, which I have mine right here for like $25 when you go to Chichen Itza. They give you the whole Mayan calendar based off your birth date. And, see my name here, and then they give you the whole constellations and their writing and their number system, which they was really big into numbers. And they give you all this. But the interesting part, if you didn't know before you went there, is it's all dealing with astrology. It's dealing with astrology. So we know they're known for the calendar. We know they're known for basically disappearing, and of course, the big one, 2012, which is supposed to be, to most people, thought was going to be the end of the world. They even made a movie called 2012, scared the hell out of a lot of people. But 2012 marked something important. And we know the whole Mayan calendar dealing with 2012. We know that they disappeared seemingly. If you go to Chichen Itza, you go to these places down there in Mexico, they'll tell you that the Maya is still there. They speak a different version of Mexican, Spanish, what have you, and that it's supposedly they supposedly are Maya people. And when you take the tour, you go to the little villages there and everything like that, and you can believe what you want to believe. But of course, we know they come from the Olmec, and you have the Olmec, then you have the Maya, then you have the Inca, and remnants or traces of those peoples could have possibly been left behind, but to me it's unlikely, which we'll touch on in this video. But, they're known for these things. And what 2012 was about, and some of you guys already know this who study, 2012, you have May 20th, 2012. Just like you had with the shadows creating the effect with the rattlesnake, with the isosceles triangles basically coming down the side of the steps, you have basically what the Maya call the Day of No Shadows, which would be May 20th, 2012. The Day of No Shadows, which what you have is you have the sun and the Pleiades basically coming together at the zenith point, which would be directly overhead. So during this time, if you stood still underneath this sun, and even if you set a bottle down or something that was straight, it would not cast a shadow. You wouldn't cast a shadow, the bottle wouldn't cast a shadow. Anything that's straight up would not cast a shadow. They call it the Day of No Shadows. And the reason why this is important to the Maya is because, one, right where I was at in Chichen Itza, this happening, which they knew was going to happen, years before, a bunch of years before it happened, May 20, 2012, it happened right over the pyramid at Chichen Itza. So it would mark, which it did mark, May 20th, 2012, which is a Sunday. That was a Sunday, ironically. So that tells you that they knew what they was doing when they made sure that day is on a Sunday. But what it marked was a 26,000 year cycle. I think it's over 26,000 year cycle to where you have this happen directly over that pyramid. So at that point, so they marked this, and it was important to them to mark this because 26,000 years will also symbolize the coming of the end of an age, and they would know 2012 would be marking eventually the end of an age and the coming of a new age, which would be what we see now coming, the age of Aquarius. So that's what 2012 was about. So you have basically 60 days after the spring equinox, you get this whole days of no shadows that happen in Chichen Itza. That's important to them, anything involving the sun. And as you guys know, during certain times of the year, I believe it happens twice as well, where you have the sun hit that opening at the top of the pyramid and give you this, illusion, the sun shining through of this serpent, Quetzalcoatl. And this is major stuff. But again, you still have to understand, one, it's a lot of, when you do the research, a lot of math, a lot of numbers in astrology. They were really good with their numbers, the Maya, and math that's in those pyramids as well, just like we see with the Great Pyramids, as if, they were trying to show something, like they understood, as we'll get into in this video. So you have this alignment with the Pleiades and the sun over Chichen Itza in Mexico that the Mayans observed, but you also have so many different civilizations that built monuments and temples and such right underneath the Pleiades and Orion, just like the Egyptians. So you have Tikal, or Tikal, however you want to pronounce it, in Guatemala. And they have the Tikal ruins. And these ruins are pyramids as well. They are absolutely amazing in Guatemala. And when you go there and look at this whole setup, as I'm going to show you later, it matches with a lot of different setups across the world. And it shows you that there was this understanding and unity in the setup of these pyramids and these temples. And the pyramids in Guatemala and Tikal also align with the Pleiades. In New Mexico, you have Pueblo Bonito. These ruins also align with the Pleiades. Now, understand, we're talking about a Native American tribes here. We're talking about the Chaco and the Puebloans, Native Americans. Same type of situation as I'm going to show you, where they built temples. They built statues aligning with the Pleiades. And this is in a different part of the world. This is New Mexico we're talking about now. Then we have it in Mexico, but you'll see it's in other places as well. We know Stonehenge aligns with the Pleiades. There's this whole connection with the Pleiades. And remember, I was talking about the rattlesnake in Chichen Itza. The people in Chichen Itza, the Maya, translated the Pleiades. They called it basically the rattlesnake's tail. You look at it, it's kind of sort of shaped like one. But we know the 7 stars are on the Pleiades, and we see the reference to the 7 stars in the Bible. Now, of course, we're talking about, Native Americans, and, the Bible ain't stretched that far yet. But, so we know they didn't get it from the Bible. You also have the Lakota Pleiades star map that also aligns with the Pleiades. And you guys may remember this from the movie of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which we're going to get into in a second. But in the book of Revelations, it's talking about 7 churches. We know about the 7 churches that I showed you guys in Turkey. They also align with the 7 stars on the Pleiades. It's not a coincidence that Job 38:31 is talking about the Pleiades. It's talking about Orion. Amos 5:8 also talking about the Pleiades and Orion. So the Pleiades, probably more than any other star system that I've seen, along with Orion, is talked about the most in the ancient world in Mesoamerica. We see it a lot. It's one of those things where everybody's talking about it, not just the Maya, not just in Mexico, but in, what we call Native American town, Native Americans, America. So you have the so-called Native Americans, which we understand was, of course, black first before the mixture happened. But you find these tribes, and one of the things people don't even get into was, what did the Native Americans actually believe in? Whenever we see stuff on TV, it always go back to animals and the spirit animals and the spirit gods and so on and so forth. But they were heavily into astrology, plain and simple. And it's something that a lot of people have no clue about. And it's one of the things in doing research that when I came across it first time when I was getting into this, it made a lot of stuff make sense. The clothes that they wore, some of the things that they do in their traditions. As I said, you just don't do certain things for no reason. And these people had nobody to front in front of. You understand? It's like you don't put on the front, or it's not a show. The stuff they was doing had to be for a reason, and it had to have some real purpose to it. So we have in Illinois, we have the Cahokia. The Cahokia are the mound builders. You know, they have that whole serpent mound. They have those mounds that look like pyramids that's in Illinois. So just like this serpent in Chichen Itza, as I said, we have the serpent mound in Illinois with the Cahokia, and we have again this alignment with the Pleiades. And when we look at this layout with the Cahokia, it's exactly the same as the whole layout in Tikal and its relationship to the Pleiades. So you also have the Pawnee, and again, we're talking about Native American tribes here. This is America. You have the Pawnee in Nebraska. And when you do your research on the Pawnee, they are basically known for watching the stars and for watching the Pleiades specifically. It's the same thing with the Cherokee. It's the same thing with the Navajo. You're going to find the same thing. You're going to find these star maps. You're going to find these structures aligned with the Pleiades and Orion. It's the same thing. And we're talking about, again, Native American, North America, finding the same thing in North America with the Native Americans, and finding the same thing in Mesoamerica with the Maya, with the Olmec and everything else, in this whole alignment with the Pleiades. Now, you get back to the Pawnee. When you start researching the Pawnee, they give us probably one of the most insightful looks into what the research is showing us when you start to look at this stuff. And again, like a lot of people don't even understand what's happening with the Native Americans, which we'll get into at the end of this video. But it's a lot of stuff going on. And a lot of people don't understand, as I said, their relationship to astrology and how it was big in their civilization and what they did. So now it says here, we're giving this whole connection here. It says, in ancient Egypt, priests wearing a leopard skin mantle on which the spots represented stars play a key role in mortuary ceremonies to prepare the deceased for the afterlife journey. Center, the high priest of the ancient Egyptian city of the sun, cult center of the Giza pyramids, was titled the chief of the astronomers and wore a mantle like this one, adorned with stars. Right, his chiefly son, Skidi Pawnee, astronomer chief. And we see this Pawnee Indian with the same type of situation wrapped with the quilt with the stars on it. So just like in Egypt, we see this whole, comparison. We see this whole thing where you have this situation with stars. And ideally, we want to, look at this and say it cannot be a coincidence. But again, I talked about this in the Believe Saturn State before. When I went to the Grand Canyon, because we're talking about Nebraska not being that far, Illinois not being that far, and of course you had with Arizona with the Grand Canyon, I showed you guys the Pyramid of Isis, which we went past Pyramid Canyon. You got to drive past to get to the Grand Canyon, and the understanding of pyramids being there and the Egyptian artifacts that was found there. And we know there's areas of the Grand Canyon that the public is not accessible to the public. And it's a lot of stuff that they have locked away from the public at the Grand Canyon. But it's an amazing sight. We can't look at it and just think that it was left alone by the Native Americans. But it gives you more insight into this connection with the ancient Egyptians. And it gives you a lot of belief that there was some connection. So if you remember, in one of my videos, I talked about what happened in Illinois, which is the mound builders with the Cahokia we just talking about was at. But I showed you guys, remember, supposedly you had a man who had found basically like a crypt, like a necropolis that was filled with Egyptian artifacts and these giant black Egyptian statues and gold statues and all these reliefs in gold and so on and so forth and all these carvings. And supposedly, when you read the story, that the body of Alexander the Great was found there along with the body of Cleopatra. And you had, what the story goes, they basically went there. Well, it's supposed to be like one guy who was coming back and bringing gold and Egyptian stuff from out of there. He didn't really want people to know where the site was. And supposedly he blew it up to keep people from getting their hands on it. We don't know what actually happened, but some of the artifacts was brought out. And some people will tell you it was deliberately made to look poor, to basically throw people off. And
some people want to say the whole thing is a hoax. But my whole thing is, if you're going to come up with some bullshit, that would be like the biggest crock of shit to say that the body of Alexander the Great and Cleopatra is in Illinois. Like, who would make up such a thing? But the fact that they did actually recover actual gold artifacts, which, um, they don't really explain that. But the carvings are, yeah, of course, primitive looking and look like somebody's kid can draw it. But you have to look at, like, the Pawnee and look at this relationship with the Egyptians and this whole comparison and ask yourself, could it be possible? And did they actually find these artifacts down there?